Chosen ones, listen closely, for the frequency of linear time has been suspended. We are navigating a rare celestial stacking where multiple structural shifts are occurring in rapid succession. This is not a matter of luck, it is a matter of high-fidelity timing. The unawakened often drift through these windows, treating them as random clusters of events. However, those operating on a sovereign timeline recognize these natural cycles for what they truly are: systemic reference points. By aligning your decision-making with these orbital rhythms, you transition from a passive observer to an active operator of your own reality. The mind does not respond to arbitrary dates. It responds to clear cosmic turning points. This week provides 3 separate opportunities to initiate a total system reset. Utilizing natural cycles like the equinox or a new moon isn't about superstition. It's about psychological anchoring. When you tie a decision to a meaningful cosmic moment, your subconscious treats it as an absolute point of inception. These reset points act as a black box for your intentions. They force you to stop drifting and commit to a specific direction. Because these shifts are stacked almost back to back, the momentum generated by the first decision is immediately amplified by the second and third. You are being handed the equivalent of a triple boost in your operational field. The most successful operators are not the smartest. They are the ones who understand when the wind is at their back. Choosing your timing is the ultimate act of sovereignty. While the world struggles to force results during periods of static, you are being invited to move during the triple stack, when the resistance is lowest and the potential for a reset is at its peak. What specific sector of your life requires a total clear and restart? Use the window between March 17th and 20th to finalize your commitment. Do not wait for a better time. The grid is optimized for you right now. Stop negotiating with the past. These back-to-back turning points are designed to help you leave the old data behind and step into a high-definition future. This week is a rare anomaly in the 2026 calendar. The universe has stacked the gates of transition to ensure that even the most hesitant are pushed toward clarity. If you have been waiting for a sign to move, realize that 3 of them are currently hitting your sector simultaneously. Chosen ones, stand in the center of your authority and breathe. Today, March 17th, 2026, the celestial ignition point has been struck. While the unawakened are drifting through their Tuesday, you are standing at the coordinate where the mind, Mercury, the will, Mars, and the instinct, Moon, have finally fused into a single lethal frequency. Most people spend their entire incarnations trapped in one of 2 matrix loops. They either think endlessly until the portal closes, or they act blindly and spend years cleaning up the wreckage. Rarely do these forces align, but today is the exception. Today is the rare window where clarity and courage show up at the exact same moment. The internal tug-of-war is over. The part of you that knows and the part of you that does have stopped pulling in opposite directions. This is why the quiet certainty is settled in your chest right now. Have you felt it? That decision that has been sitting in the background for months suddenly feels ready. That conversation you've been avoiding now feels like the most natural thing in the world to have. This is the first spark. It is the moment where hesitation has lost its grip because the truth has become too loud to ignore. You are realizing that the mountain you were staring at was just a shadow. The next step is not as difficult as the Matrix wanted you to believe. You are finally recognizing that the situations you were putting up with no longer fit the frequency of the person you are becoming. The timing of this spark is deliberate and surgical. It is happening right now, just days before the new moon wipes the slate clean. The universe is giving you the realization before the reset. It is asking you to see the truth clearly, so that when the new cycle begins, you aren't carrying the old baggage into the new fire. The ignition is active. Like this transmission right now to signal to the universe that your mind and your will are finally in alignment. Subscribe and turn on the bell. As we approach the equinox, the ignition points will come faster. This channel is your constant synchronization point. In the comments below, type alignment to lock in this frequency. What is the one thing that felt complicated yesterday but feels obvious today? If this channel has helped you find the courage to act on your clarity, you can support me with a cup of coffee, because every seed you release becomes a river that reaches souls you may never meet. The donation link is waiting for you in the description, pinned in the comments and shown as a QR code in this video. Your support is a powerful energetic signature, confirming your readiness for the new moon reset. Clarity alone is a map. Courage alone is a motor, but together they are sovereignty. The spark has been struck, chosen one. Don't just watch the light, be the fire. Arriving just a single day after the lunar cycle reaches its invisible nadir, the equinox descends upon us on March 20th, ushering in one of the most exquisitely balanced windows of time in the entire calendar year. On this particular day, the subtle tilt of our planet produces a phenomenon of profound symmetry. Day and night are woven into almost perfect equality across the globe. No matter where one stands on the terrestrial map, from the frozen tundras to the equatorial rainforests, every location experiences a nearly identical measure of radiance and shadow. This celestial equilibrium is a rare gift that occurs only twice during the Earth's annual voyage around the Sun. Yet for millennia, humanity has instinctively recognized it as a definitive crossroads. The equinox was never merely a cold astronomical observation recorded in stone charts. It was revered as a cosmic flare, a signal that the very pulse of the world was shifting its tempo once again. Following the March equinox, the northern hemisphere begins its slow, steady lean toward the sun. Daylight begins to reclaim the territory of the night. Mornings arrive with an earlier golden hue, and the evenings stretch their limbs further into the darkness. This is more than just a change in weather. It is a fundamental tipping of the scales toward the light. This transformation has forever symbolized the resurgence of vitality, the stirrings of growth, and the inevitable push of forward movement. Ancient civilizations, in their vast wisdom, anchored their entire temporal existence to this moment, constructing elaborate monuments and calendars around its arrival. For the farmer, it was the hallowed return of the planting season. For the weary traveler, it was the sign that the frozen gates of winter were finally swinging open and the world was becoming navigable once more. It represented the precise second when the natural world ceased its quiet preparation and stepped into visible, vibrant motion. Hidden within this astronomical event is a powerful metaphysical truth. Balance is the necessary silence before momentum. Once true equilibrium is reached, movement becomes possible again. This year, the timing is particularly evocative because the equinox arrives immediately on the heels of the new moon, creating a sequence that feels like a deliberate orchestration of the universe. First, the lunar cycle resets, clearing the emotional and spiritual slate, and then the Earth itself shifts into a new seasonal rhythm. When celestial events stack this closely together, they create a resonant frequency, a sense that something vital is beginning, not just in one small corner of our lives, but across multiple, overlapping layers of time and existence. On March 19th, the sky reaches one of its quietest, yet most spiritually heavy moments. The new moon. Unlike the full moon, which demands attention by flooding the world with reflected silver, the new moon does the opposite. For a brief, sacred window, the moon disappears from our view entirely. The night sky deepens into a rich, velvety black because the lunar cycle has reached its absolute reset point. Ancient cultures noticed this long before the mechanics of orbits were understood. They described it with a simple, haunting elegance. The moon must go dark before it can return. That disappearance became a cornerstone of human symbolism because it demonstrated a fundamental law of renewal. The previous cycle does not merely blend or fade into the next, it must end completely before the new one can take its first breath. The sky, in essence, clears the page before writing the next chapter. This is why the new moon has always been the patron of beginnings. Not through grand theatre or loud proclamations, but through a quiet, symbolic vacuum. It teaches us that true renewal must start from a blank space. The past phase must fade into total invisibility before the next phase can begin to take shape. Nature demonstrates this principle every single month without fail. The moon does not attempt to rewrite its story while the previous script is still visible. It vanishes, waits, and then starts again from the smallest, most delicate trace of light. There is a hard truth behind this process. You cannot begin a new chapter of your life while the ink on the last page is still wet. The new moon is that dry, empty page. The moment where previous momentum halts and a new direction begins to crystallize in the dark. What many people fail to realize is that the most potent part of this cycle actually occurs just before the new moon itself. The 48 hours leading up to the reset, particularly the day of March 18th, are often referred to as the dark moon phase. During this time, the moon reflects virtually no visible light toward Earth, making it a ghost in the night sky. Across many ancient traditions, this period was never considered empty or dead. Instead, it was viewed as the most powerful part of the entire cycle because the old momentum had finally died away while the new impulse had not yet sparked. Think of it as a blank canvas in an artist's studio. When a painting is halfway finished, the artist is already locked into certain colors and compositions. They must work around what is already there. But when the canvas is completely bare, every possible masterpiece still exists in a state of potential. The dark moon phase carries that same quality of infinite possibility. Because the previous lunar cycle has ended, there is no longer a strong current pushing you in the direction you've been moving for the last several weeks. The slate is temporarily beautifully clear. This is why this window often brings a sudden, piercing clarity. It is not because of magic, but because the human mind naturally finds its center when the external noise of a cycle stops. In this pause, people begin to recognize what they truly desire, distinguishing their authentic voice from the habits they have been repeating on autopilot. Clarity is the daughter of the pause. The new moon on March 19th officially ignites the next lunar cycle. But the realization of what that cycle will hold often begins to form during that dark moon window just before. However, what makes March 20th truly historic this year is that the equinox is not the only reset occurring. At the exact same moment that day and night reach their perfect symmetry, the sun also enters Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. This detail is frequently overlooked in the rush of daily life, yet it fundamentally alters the energetic architecture of the entire week. Aries is not just another sign in the sequence, it is the 0-degree point, the cosmic headwaters where the entire zodiacal wheel begins its journey anew after completing a full 12-month transit. In traditional astrology and many ancient calendar systems, the real new year was never in January. It was tied to this exact moment, the sun's entry into Aries, because it coincided with the equinox and the visible rebirth of the natural world. The sky itself was the true calendar. When you look at the timing of this specific week, a rare alignment appears. Within just a few days, 3 distinct cycles reach their reset point simultaneously. The lunar cycle, new moon, the seasonal cycle, Equinox, and the zodiacal cycle, Aries. This convergence creates a localized surge of momentum that can feel unusually intense. It isn't just one gear turning, it's the entire clockwork of the sky shifting its weight at once. To grasp the nature of this energy, one must understand the archetype of Aries. Aries has always symbolized the raw spark of courage, the impulse of initiative, and the terrifying, beautiful willingness to move first. It is the archetype of the pioneer, the individual who steps into the tall grass before anyone else is certain of the path. Aries' energy is not cautious. It does not wait for a committee to vote, and it does not require a map before it begins walking. Instead, it represents a very specific psychological breakthrough, the willingness to begin. You do not find the path by standing still and waiting for it to be revealed. You create the path by the very act of taking the first step. This is why Aries season is synonymous with boldness and the commencement of epic journeys. As the sun moves into this sign, the very atmosphere around us tends to shift toward action. You may find yourself feeling a sudden surge of motivation, a restlessness that makes sitting still feel impossible. It is the energy of a person who decides to try, even before they have figured out the how. Once Aries season takes hold, the paralysis of waiting begins to lose its grip on the spirit. At the heart of this week's celestial dance is the equinox, that fleeting moment of perfect balance. But the equinox is not a destination, it is a doorway. What matters most is what happens the very second after the balance is reached. In the northern hemisphere, once this threshold is crossed, the light begins to take the lead. The sun rises earlier, the shadows shorten, and the evenings linger. Life begins to accelerate. Plants that were dormant begin to reach. Animals that were quiet begin to hunt. Plans that were gathering dust begin to move. There is a simple, profound way to understand this. Balance is the platform upon which growth is built. Without that brief moment of equilibrium, the forward motion would be chaotic. The Earth is crossing a threshold into a chapter where light occupies more space, and the year begins its true march forward. We often romanticize the idea of a fresh start. Modern culture has spent decades selling a polished, sanitized version of it, one where new beginnings feel immediately empowering and everything clicks into place with a soundtrack of inspiration. But if you look at how real tectonic change occurs in a human life, you realize that genuine fresh starts rarely feel good at the beginning. Most true turning points feel strange, heavy, or even unsettling before they feel exciting. They feel like uncertainty before they feel like inspiration. They feel like a cold wind before they feel like a warm hearth. This is why a week like this can produce such a confusing emotional climate. When the balance between dark and light shifts, it doesn't feel like instant relief. It often feels like exposure. Think of it like walking out of a dimly lit room into the searing brightness of a summer afternoon. Your first instinct isn't to celebrate the light, it's to squint. Your eyes struggle to adjust. The brightness feels aggressive, almost overwhelming, until your vision finally stabilizes and you can see the landscape in high definition. Growth works exactly the same way. What makes weeks like this so deceptive is that they rarely feel dramatic while they are happening. There are no cosmic sirens, no celestial fireworks to tell you that the trajectory of your life is changing. In real time, it feels like an ordinary Tuesday. You go to the office, you drink your coffee, you have mundane conversations about the weather or chores. And yet, when you look back 6 months from now, you will likely point to this window of time. You will remember a realization that hit you while driving, or a seemingly small decision you made to stop doing one thing and start doing another. These moments don't announce themselves, they whisper. Their significance is only revealed through the passage of time. That is why the most valuable thing you can do during a week of triple resets is to simply pay attention. Be an observer of your own internal landscape. Notice the ideas that keep surfacing in the quiet moments. Notice the opportunities that suddenly seem more colorful than they did a month ago. Notice where your intuition is nudging you, even if it doesn't make logical sense yet. There is a quote that captures this perfectly. The most important turning points in life rarely look important in the moment. They appear ordinary, even trivial, while they are unfolding. Only in the rear-view mirror do we realize that the entire direction of our journey shifted during those few quiet days. Sometimes life doesn't announce a revolution with a shout. It announces it with a slight change in perspective that alters every step you take thereafter. So, as you move through these next few days, don't look for the dramatic. Instead, meet the world with a sense of curious observation. If you feel a bit exposed or uncertain, remember the metaphor of the eyes adjusting to the sun. You are simply acclimating to a new level of light. Every cycle in nature eventually turns back toward growth. The light always returns, the momentum always builds, and the new path always reveals itself to those who are willing to take the first step. Meet these coming days with patience and an open heart. You may be much closer to the beginning of a profound new chapter than you can currently see. Just keep walking. The light is growing.